All right, I'm here with my first interview on the channel, and I'm here with Abby. She's a good friend of mine from multiple Facebook groups. I met her in the CS Joseph Facebook group, and we're also in a Jungian psychology reading book club group as well, which is both are very fun. She's been a really good member in either group and is usually involved in typing people and helping other people who are confused. But today we're going to talk about stereotypes and how they affect the community. Um, the good and the bad in some ways, but I think she'll agree with me that for the most part, it seems to be it's a big problem in the MBTI community because people aren't typing themselves by interaction styles. They're not typing themselves by temperaments, or they're not typing themselves even by cognitive functions. They're typing themselves by stereotypes. And so they're saying like, well, I think I'm abstract because I like to talk about space, and so I must be an INTP, and you run into this kind of weird stuff, and it doesn't really make any sense to anybody. And I've ran into this myself personally in real life and on the internet, and even on YouTube now with my own channel and the different things I run into. And so she's going to talk about different things that she's ran into as well due to stereotypes. Let me introduce you. Abby is an INFJ, by the way. And so here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
Um, so what do you want to talk about?
What do I want to talk about?
Well, yeah, do you have any questions? Or do you just want me to kind of just shoot what I think?
Just shoot what you want to think, and I'll just interrupt. That's what ENTPs do.
Okay. So from what I've noticed, at least from an ENTP perspective, is that sometimes SI memory plays a big part in creating those stereotypes from experiences.
Okay.
And does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
on our standpoint, yeah.
right. So, for example, if you're in an area where it's common for certain types to act a certain way, then that to me that's kind of limited to your personal perspective. Whereas in reality, that's not a universal end all be all. That's something that's kind of limited to your memory and your experience. I don't have that issue because I basically have no memory pattern gathering. Mine's just all straightforward. So I'm kind of more immune to creating those flaws. Plus, I have T trickster, so it's just I don't know. I just see people outside of those stereotypes.
Yeah,
If
no,
that makes
I
sense.
get that, and I've mentioned this many times in the group, in different chat about kind of like almost being envious of NJs in some way, because you guys can type people based with a clean slate.
Hmm.
With myself, I think ENTPs, ENFPs, for instance, INTPs, INFPs as well, really how good they are really comes from life experience.
Hmm.
I think why I've been able to pick this up so quickly, and some people have been impressed with me, but it's just I've lived in 8 states,
Hmm.
and so since I'm an SI user, I'm gonna talk about myself right now. But and so I've lived in 8 states, I've lived in 4 countries, and I've seen a lot of different things. And so yeah, you're right. So you can have somebody who's an SI user typing somebody who's grew up in California, and if
Hmm.
that's all they know,
Right.
all they know is California INFJs. All they know is
Hmm.
California ESFPs. That's all they know. And because culture
Exactly.
does influence things, that's why I think it's so important not to type other people based on cognitive functions, because cognitive functions can be varied depending on how you grew up.
Exactly. Exactly. And the other thing is, especially for ENTPs, is the FE adapting to the morals. So maybe just the general morality of like a certain type or whatever. I mean, just I don't know if you get what I'm saying,
I,
but just that adapting and that kind of um, that pull to maybe have a bias based on the morality of people around you, I guess. I don't know if I'm conveying what I'm trying to say correctly, but to me that also kind of plays into the possible and that can actually go for me too. Like there was a point in my life where outside of the MBTI stereotypes, for example, like I used to think that because I was raised in a Christian home, like smokers are bad, people that drink alcohol are bad. So it's like you automatically get this like bad juju vibe, like when you're around. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes any sense, but like, so I don't know, that to me, that can also kind of add to
Uh,
stereotypes.
well, as an ENTP, let me just speak. I never allow morality or ethics to come into the play. I really could care less about that. That to me, that is the most subjective, information for me when I'm typing other people. It's
Mhm.
like they're good and bad at what they do and things like that. To me, that I've met obviously a Jehovah's Witness. That's how I grew up, and I lived for 35 years, and I've met all 16 types as a Jehovah's Witness, and I know that can vary from person to person to person, and you can travel to Egypt, for instance, and you have a Muslim culture,
Mhm.
and I know those ethics are completely changed. And so I'm always a trip in like philosophy meetings when they want to talk about good and evil, because I don't believe in it, you know.
Right.
And so good and evil is very subjective depending on your culture, upbringing, things like that. Uh, but I get what you're saying. So when it comes to like helping other people and
Mhm.
typing and things like that, what are some issues that you've ran into?
Um, so as far as so when we type people, we have a way that we actually make it like we have evidence beyond evidence, evidence, and I found when you come across the TI trickster types, the ESFPs and the ENFPs, they're very, very hard to convince, and sometimes even with all the evidence we've provided. Um, they still want to fight it, and there's been some hostility
Yeah.
because they're not putting together the pieces, and they're like, well, but I'm not a party animal, so I can't be an ESFP, or I'm not, I don't think of myself as a hippie, so I can't be an ENFP, and that's not true. People are more complicated than that.
Yeah, because I've met ESFP historians that are boring as hell, you know,
Right.
and they're like, well, what that makes me an ESFP? I'm nothing like the Kardashians or whatever like that.
Right.
And you're like, well, I know, but you're an ESFP because your interaction style is initiating, you're informative in your movement, and your
Right.
temperament is pragmatic and interest based. As
Right.
soon as you cut through all the BS of cognitive functions and stereotypes like that, it clears up everything very simply.
Yeah.
And that's funny to me that you say that, because I run into the same problems too. And I as someone that doesn't understand FI, you understand a lot better than I do, but neither of us are really FI users, so it is kind of still an enigma in some ways.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that from how I've been explained to, people get attached to it.
Hmm.
So you have an
Yep.
emotional attachment to this label.
Yes.
And so you have 6 billion INFJs out there. You have 6 billion, ENFPs or whatever like that. And you're like, well, I thought they were kind of supposed to be a rare type,
Hmm.
and a lot of people don't even think about the negative stereotypes on that side,
Hmm.
and then they're like, I'm not a party animal. Okay, but are you an emotional basket case? What if you thought about it that way? They don't think about it
Yeah.
that way. They just think, oh, INFJ, they're just so
Right.
zen.
Well,
And
in response to that, if you look online at the INFJ, like all the articles and stuff that are out, they're all like, like putting INFJs on this pious, throne of excellence, like we're just some like huge saviors of the world, and they make it seem like we're these like people that are just shining our light in the dark, and and we're just normal people. Well, I wouldn't say normal, but we're just people. And
Yeah,
there's a darker side to that. That is
correct.
not fun.
No, you're
So
right. And
mhm,
I've only dated one INFJ in my life, and granted, I love them, and I still think highly of them in so many different ways. But it's like dealing with Eeyore on a regular basis, and you're just like, okay, and there is a connection between ENTPs and INFJs, and it's like,
mhm,
I think both types really look at each other and want to take care of the other person, because we say,
mhm.
how do you get through life? Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I absolutely do.
So
I mean,
you look at ENTPs and say, how the hell do you get through life? I look at INFJs and I wonder how the hell do you get through life, and I want to help you. You know, and that's kind of how that relationship works, and that's how many people recommend them as dating, in a lot of different ways, and I recommend that too. I mean, I have no qualms with, I think it's a good pairing in some ways. Uh, Granted, I always found that INFJs always try to like develop my FI that's not there, which is fun.
oh, geez.
But uh, but we have had good stories about people who were confused.
Mhm.
I'll bring out Vic because I'm sure he's not shy, and he was confused in the group for many months and months. Am I an
Why was
ENFP?
he confused though?
Huh?
Why was he confused?
Because he has TE child. Oh,
Well, I mean,
that's the
I think
objective way to look at it. But
what I was getting at is like everybody thought he was an ENFP because he like fit the stereotype of like this cute little,
yeah.
yeah,
You're
cigar.
right, and I mean, I had no reason to question him. It's not like I saw a lot of evidence to suggest, "Oh no, you're not," because ENFPs and ESFPs are similar in many ways,
Hmm.
but then they're very not. I mean, similar in other ways, and so it's just like it's funny but you bring the information to him, and yeah, we had to convince him. We had to talk to him for a while, but it's like he accepted the evidence and accepted where it came from and the trusted source, and and now he's moving on.
Hmm.
And I remember when I think it was you that sent me this video,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I was just like, okay, whatever. And then he starts talking, and I was expecting to hear ENFP type stuff,
Right.
and he's just like, Essie, Essie, Essie. And I'm
Hmm.
just like, oh, wow. I'm like, no
Yeah.
way. I'm like, okay. And it was just like, and it's funny about those types itself, because there's really four types that you can type the fastest. And let me see if you agree with this.
Okay.
Obviously ESTJs, because they're the only SIs of the structure type.
Well, I haven't had that. I haven't come across that one yet, but I won't disagree with you on that one.
Okay, so you have the structure type. Every single one is
Right.
an SE user besides ESTJ.
Hmm.
So you just like, okay, they're direct, okay, they're initiating, okay, they're control, and they keep talking about their own experience over and over again. You're like, okay, ESTJ. It's pretty quick, and then you're like, oh, this person's a starter, and they keep talking about other people's experience. They keep talking about locations. They keep talking about,
Hmm.
what the group dynamic was. You're like, oh, SE user, okay, great, ESFP, and then you have the next level down. You're like, oh, they're responding, they're direct, their movement, oh, they're talking about their own experience a lot. Oh, ISTJ, because it's the only SI user. And then the next one down, obviously ISFP, which is the only SE user of the background control types. And so those types are pretty quick and easy to figure out, I think. But what has been the case with some people that have resisted the idea of being an ESFP? Because I know it's happened quite a bit.
Yeah. So there was I won't say who this person is, but and I don't even think they would see this video. And if they did, that's fine. But I won't say any names. So there was this one guy, and I mean, we must have had a 35-minute video of, I mean, just informative and SE everywhere, pragmatic, everything. And I mean, we went through, and we might not have even transcribed all of it with the labels, but anyway, we gave a ton of evidence. And We sat in a group chat, me and 3 other people with him, answering questions for about a week. And he's still, I mean, he was set off emotionally really fast. TI trickstered everywhere, eventually just kind of just left the group. I mean, just got angry, blocked me, I think maybe blocked another person in the chat. I mean, got on Facebook and started posting other like things about, well, if I'm not INFJ and I'm ESFP, then why blah blah blah. And he would just ask these questions, and it was all stereotype related. And it's like, don't you see you're demonstrating your own trickster here? Like, it was just, it was
Yeah.
impossible. There was nothing we could say to him, and it was, I mean, it was really sad actually. It was, I don't know, I wish I would have done more. Maybe I sometimes I wonder if I did something different. But
Are,
anyway,
are
so
you feeling guilty? That's weird for an
like,
INFJ.
I do a little bit. No, because I just use that to kind of just be better next time. That's
Yeah.
all I can do.
Yeah, it is sad because I think the group and just not group, but well, group, I could say group too, but the community itself is definitely lacking concrete types.
Hmm.
And I love concrete types. I know you do too. I have tons
You
of people.
do.
My father's an ESFP. And so it's not like, I think, aren't you dating an ESFP?
We just broke up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's
Sorry,
okay.
I didn't know. So,
It's okay.
look at foot,
We just
foot
broke
in
up a few
mouth.
days ago.
And
It's
so
okay.
obviously there's
I
no
just,
bias. It's not like you're like, oh, you're a lesser person,
no,
and
not at all.
no one thinks that, we have plenty. I'm going to have an ESFP on the show. I want to talk about, I call it a show, but I would talk about teaching because she's a teacher in the Philippines, and that'd be great. But I think it's funny when you deal with stuff like that, and it also doesn't help because I think there's also like a funny meme going around here where there's like people saying like learning about cognitive functions, learning about interaction styles, learning about temperaments, and then learning about memes, and so they so all you have is like memes of ESTPs or memes of INFJs or memes of ENTPs. They're like, okay, well, I fit this meme, so that's who I am. and
Right,
and it's not like we don't have enough attackers already in the educational system as it is.
right,
Mainline psychologists, dismiss this. I
right.
have my theories on why that is. A lot of the arguments is because, oh, well, most people score in the middle anyways.
Hmm.
Okay, well, most people are SPs or SJs, and those two temperaments are the most balanced. Would you
Right.
agree?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so they can do anything, and it's I want to say the abstract people aren't the healthy people of society,
Hmm.
and so it's just like in a video game analogy, we're kind of like the wizards who need to be protected, or in some sort, and like the normal people have to protect us because we can't, because we're so out there, in some ways, in a lot of different ways, and in my opinion, and how that works. But no, I've had issues with people on my chat, talking about, oh, you're not an ENTP because you're not an asshole. And I'm like,
Maybe you
well,
could be.
I mean, I guess I could be, but it's just like, if to me, with if an ENTP is an asshole and TE critic is constantly going off nonstop, he's immature.
There's something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's immature, and that's
Yeah.
a negative stereotype of very unhealthy ENTPs.
Right.
Because you're talking about a type that has an optimistic FE child function.
Hmm. Right.
And the child function arguably is the most sensitive function by far.
Hmm. Right.
And a lot of times it kind of runs your life. Because
Hmm.
ENTPs have issues with Stockholm syndrome, for instance, because we get attached to people because we care.
Right. Right.
Now granted, I will admit that I can leave the scene where there's heavy FI and not feel anymore. And that's nice, because I understand other people can't do that. you
Oh
know,
no.
and so it's just like, but if I go to a place like a funeral, for instance, and you might, sympathize with me on this, and funerals for FE users are a lot harder than FI users, I think,
Yes,
because
I
all of that
totally agree.
emotion is there and we're just absorbing it, and you're
Yeah,
just like, ah, and it's
yeah,
like, you're killing me. You feel like you're getting water thrown on you, you're a green witch or something, and
yeah,
that's kind of funny about that. But yeah, I mean, so there is good stories, and then we also have the other story with Pedro also, who for the longest time thought he was an ESTP,
yeah.
and now has accepted an ESFP as well in the group. And
Yeah, I had to pull the trigger on that one. That was it. I wasn't the one that noticed it. I mean, I saw that there were some inconsistencies, but I had somebody from the group actually come to me and say, "Hey, Abby, you're really nice. Like, will you go tell Petro that, this and this and this?" And I looked at a couple of his comments and then started talking to him, and I saw for myself, like, oh yeah, he's definitely FI user. So that's when I decided, like, hey, let's do some searching here, and yeah,
yeah,
I had to pull the trigger on that one. But he's one of my favorite people.
yeah, I hope one day to go to Romania and visit him. I definitely need to get back to Europe eventually, and I haven't been to Romania before, so that'd be definitely a cool person to meet over there. And
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. And kind of like in the group, I was like kind of like just this person and just like made videos and just talked. And I never really had any interest in like being in the community. And so I always thought it's nice that there's people such as yourself that are, triple interest, double affiliative, who kind of help a lot more than I do, and a lot of these people, after you guys would like expose them, guess who
yeah,
they went to talk to? That's when
yeah.
my instant message starts filling up with all these people. Am I not an ESTP or am I not
Are
an
you
ENFP?
kidding me?
No,
I
like
didn't know
everybody.
that.
Yeah, so
I didn't know that.
even
Did they
before
just
you
all
guys
flock
even
to
told me or
you?
invited me, I knew about this little cabal you guys had on the side, and so I was just like, okay, and I was like, well, why? Well, what's your argument against or what's your argument for? Because I'm just like because myself personally, I think people are ready to change when they're ready.
Hmm.
As a person who left the Jehovah's Witness cult and
Hmm.
understands emotional attachment and cognitive dissonance very well,
Hmm.
and I understand that MBTI community also invites a lot of emotionally damaged people.
Oh yeah.
I suppose you agree with that. And
I very much agree with that.
and
Yes.
so most people coming into the community are trying to looking for something to attach themselves to.
Yes.
And again, that's where the stereotypes come back in. And so then they're like,
Yes.
well, I don't wear club dresses, and so I'm not an ESFP, or I don't know how to play the guitar, so I'm not an ISFP, and you're
Mm,
like, not all ISFPs play the guitar,
right.
and
Right. No, that's exactly true. Or I'm not, I'm not crying in the corner, so I can't be, an INFJ, or like
yeah,
whatever. I
and
think
that's funny, you're like, well, how far are you going to go with this? You're like, so you're not an ESTJ because you're not a politician?
there's
So
so
like,
many
well, you've
reasons.
never been in politics, so you're not an ESTJ. I mean, okay.
Right.
Well, you've never been a college professor, so you're not an ISTJ. It's really really silly.
It is.
And I just had Christmas dinner with an ESFP who was really nice, and he's an engineer. I don't think he goes to
Mm,
the clubs. I don't
right.
think he's a
Right.
binge drinker, partier, saying that's hot. That's not how it works. And it is funny to me. I mean, I find things like this funny. I know it's sad. It's supposed to be sad, but ENTPs are screwed up, so we find
I
things.
mean, yeah, you gotta see the humor in it, and then you get sucked in and into the
Yeah.
vortex.
Okay. Um, so that's a good stopping point on the stereotypes and and the negatives and the positives of it. Uh, what are some things that you think needs to be addressed in the community?
As far as stereotypes or just anything in
Just
general?
in general, you know?
Um, I mean, I would say, again, pointing back to stereotypes, like, let's not add to, oh, well, he must be like that because, you know, he's a ESFP or whatever. I did want to say, in the community, I've also seen people stereotyping functions,
Okay.
like functions by themselves. So one ESFP said, well, somebody told me that, somebody that reacts really, like shakes and stuff to, like, when they hear loud noises, that must be SE inferior. So that must mean I'm an INFJ.
What the heck? Okay, that's a new one. No, yeah, you're right. I've got that too. Someone said that I'm not an ENTP because I use too much TE. I'm like, well, it's my critic function and my occupation is as a teacher.
Right.
So, I mean, and I was a Jehovah's Witness that literally knocked on doors on a regular basis trying to teach people stuff. And so
Right.
I've been using TE since age 4, you know,
Right.
and this includes public speaking, things like that. And so, yeah. And so with me personally, when typing people, when it comes to anything, I just try to figure out their interaction style first, because
Hmm.
that's the easiest thing to do, I think.
Yeah.
I think everyone kind of follows that system in some way. Finding a temperament can be difficult because, like you said, if they live in a state like California, for instance, and you're supposed to care about the environment, and so let's sound affiliative as possible, just so you don't cause any problems, and I was guilty of that too, especially when I lived in Oregon, because it was around a bunch of hippies, and so I was just
Right.
like, oh, okay, well, I got to be vegan, I got to do this. And well, granted, I care about animals, but that doesn't make me affiliative,
Right.
and so
Exactly.
that's just how it is, about that. But yeah, and so for me in this channel, to ramble on a little bit more, but I didn't want to become like the next MBTI guru. I'm still new at this. That was not my role about this. I was just trying to help like the Jehovah's Witness community itself. And I talked to Robert about this, which is kind of funny. About he's an INTJ, everyone, and he's also an ex Jehovah's Witness. And I was like, well, why aren't you doing this kind of stuff? Why aren't you going to do this? Because like he's like, well, I don't have FE guilt, and I'm like, that's true. So I'm pretty much just doing this because I think I should,
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
because I want to. That's like irrelevant to an ENTP, about what I want. It's really about other people. Like, you should start a channel, so I did. And oh, you should talk about this, so I do. And it's like, I don't know. And so to fulfill some stereotypes, I don't really feel too passionate about anything either way. That's fine. And so I'm just making videos and stuff like that. And so now I was getting kind of bored with doing this by myself, and so I'm just like reaching out to different people, and it seems like a lot of people are interested. And
Hmm.
if I might critique CS Joseph a little bit about his channel, is why doesn't he interview other people? I would think if you're trying to endorse, your life coaching sessions, you should interview people who maybe done it or promoted things like that. And there would be no shortage of people, who would promote yourself in that way. So that's kind of weird to me, but it's not really a critique, but uh, yeah. So I had no intentions on being like some kind of diva or anything like that. But is there anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I just want to put it out there that, as far as the MBTI community goes, every type has something to offer. Um, and we all have common links somehow. I do these interviews, on the side just for fun because I enjoy, being able to see people being picked apart and, burying themselves to me. And I see so many colorful, like, things about people, and, they're all different types, sensors included, you know, thinking types, all of it. And there's no reason to have shame in being, you know,
Excuse me.
whatever type, because you think that, you're going to get stereotyped a certain way or whatever. That's honestly, that's a bunch of BS.
Well, they are
There's
going to get
something
stereotyped a
valuable.
certain way, but
Well, right, but who cares? Like, I'm just saying, like,
yeah,
don't resist your type because of the stereotypes. Like,
break the
make it
stereotypes.
your own. Like, break it. Like, be
Yeah,
you, and be the fire that burns right through it. I mean, it's stupid, and I think that every type has something to bring that's
yeah.
valuable to the world. So
I'm,
I mean, that's my preaching for the.
yeah, I 100% agree. And whether you want to believe in God or you want to believe in evolution, either way, I think there's a reason why life is set up the way it is. If there was too many INFJs, the world would be much different and probably not for the
Oh my
better.
gosh. Oh man, I don't even want to
If there
think
was,
about that.
I mean, I don't want to live in a world with only ENTPs. That would drive me insane. That just sounds terrible.
Yeah.
And it would probably just be the world burning over and over again. And so, uh, and so there's a reason why most people are of the SJ temperament, for instance, because they are stable people.
Mhm.
And they
Yeah.
build the foundation on earth, and I'm very thankful for them. My own mother's an ISFJ, granted I'm being shunned, but which is a stereotype for ISFJs, but all Jehovah's Witnesses shun, doesn't matter what type you are. So there's not really an ISFJ stereotype. It's just, they're whatever the religion is forcing them to do. And so, yeah, I'm very thankful for SJs in their world. And I think most people, have an SFJ mother in some sort, and they
I do.
appreciate that. And my aspiration is an ISFJ. And so I've
Mhm.
always looked at that type with admiration. And I'm like, man, I wish I was that grounded, and I wish I could just figure stuff out, because I just meet ISFJs and it's just like they seem like to have everything figured out by 21.
Yes, I do.
And I'm just like, well, how the heck do you know you want to be a mother? How do you know you want to be a father? How do you know you want to be a police officer? How do you know you want to do this already? And in all honesty, it's not really what they want. It's like they accepting their duty, you know. And,
Exactly.
and so it's just like with me with SI inferior, I'm afraid of my duty.
Mhm.
And so it's just like, ooh, you want me to be that, and I'll be stuck and trapped. And it's so funny, when you take, the information given by the C.S. Joseph and other YouTubers and stuff like that, and you read the books by Dr. John Beebe, Linda Behrens, and then you realize what your fears are, and then you're honest with yourself, and then you embrace them. Like, I'm so
Yes.
proud of you and other INFJs in the community who have gone out of their way and put themselves on video, and just like, well, I want
Yeah.
to conquer this fear. And I'm totally supporting that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
with me, I didn't really have the issue with overcoming the SI inferior, I think, because I didn't really have a choice. I was always forced to try new things. I was always forced to knock on doors. I was always forced to go on stage. I was always forced. This was all obligations, otherwise you hate God. And so it's just kind of like weird to me. And so when I see people in the community, breaking through those stereotypes, saying, hey, well, you can't be an INFJ because you're getting on camera and you're not afraid.
Right. Right. They
you
don't
know
know. They don't know what's happening.
and so it's crazy. And but I think that's great. And so if you are, you know, resisting a certain type, or you're basing your things off of stereotypes, or you think a cognitive function has to be a certain way, and you're like, well, Matt, you're not arrogant enough to be a TI parent, or you're too nice to be an ENTP. I embraced being the nice ENTP. I'm totally fine with that. And most ENTPs piss me off, for instance, because they think, well, I'm pragmatic and I'm systematic, so that means I don't have to care.
Right.
Because they're like, well, if this is my type, then I'm going to embrace that stereotype and I'm going to put it and make it my own.
Mhm.
No. The whole point of this is empowerment. The whole point of this is figuring out how to improve yourself. That's what I
Right.
thought it was,
Yeah.
And so maybe I'm just too idealistic or something about that. I don't know. But yeah, so funny thing about stereotypes about that is, yes, if you are a person and you're trying to type based on stereotypes, and they're out there, that's probably the
Right.
majority of people that do it.
Yeah,
They go on
absolutely.
Wikipedia or they go on different memes and they look at all these different stereotypes and they look at how people dress. Now, granted, there is something to that.
There's a smidgen,
Yeah,
but there's also a reason that has to be followed up with that.
correct. And
It's,
like,
I think.
one stereotype people can throw against me is I'm not wearing black all the time. Okay, which is funny because I have black clothes, and but the idea of just wearing all black all the time, that sounds just stupid. Uh, not not that I care what I look like, because clearly I don't, and it's 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 not that I care. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm more of a cheery, like maybe people call me the nice ENTP, and
Right,
it's just like I'd rather wear yellow. I'd rather
right,
wear orange. I'd rather wear red. And what's wrong with those colors? Does that mean I have, a strengthened SE demon somehow?
right,
Maybe. My dad was a roofer. My dad's father is an ESFP. I grew up around SE all the time. You know, and I want to do a I'm going to do a conversation tomorrow with another ENTP female, and I want to talk about like the stereotypes that we had to deal with growing up.
oh my gosh,
Because being an SI user male, and I'm
yeah,
sure you can sympathize, being an SE user female
yeah,
has its issues.
hmm,
Because typically speaking, in most of humanity, and most especially people under Judeo-Christian religion, you know, SE is manliness,
yes,
SI is feminine.
yes,
And so to me, I grew up not really fitting in with other men in a lot of different ways, because I was like anticipating what people needed, what they wanted.
hmm,
I was trying to take care of people and things like that. And so people were like, what are you doing? That's like, and this, I come
yeah,
from a sexist religion. That's women's work, and like, that's how I grew up, was like, well, Matt, you shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. That's for women,
right,
and I'm just like, okay, and my sister, who's an ENTJ, for instance, grew up in the same type of upbringing, and she's an ENTJ, which is the most alpha of alphas, essentially,
hmm,
and
yeah,
women don't do that. Women don't
right,
act that way. This is
right,
from my ISFJ mother, who
oh
just
yeah,
berates her over and over again. No, you got to be like me,
right. I
you
can
know?
I can totally relate to that stereotype for SE being more of a masculine, because I've always been sort of androgynous, just
Yeah.
never knowing, kind of, I mean, just never having this uncanny ability to kind of, um, I don't know, I've just always kind of came off masculine, I guess. And I even joke around now with my friends, like, oh, don't take that picture, I look like a man. Like, like, I don't know what it is. Like, it's, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I was a tomboy growing up, you know,
Yeah.
totally goes against the stereotypes. No, never like, oh, I'm cold, like, give me a blanket. Like, I was never like that, ever.
Like, I love being given a blanket. So, you know,
You can have mine.
and as you know, I love baths, and so these are kind of stereotypes for SI users. We love our comforts and things like that.
Right,
And
right.
and it doesn't matter. I mean, I've made videos about, as a teacher itself, dealing with my students, and I'm sure you deal with clients as well, that regardless if they're an SE user or an SI user, they're going to be the same, either male or female.
Hmm.
In a lot of different ways. Yeah, granted, you can still argue there's difference in sexes. Most definitely, you have hormones
Yeah,
involved and things like that. And sure, but for the most part, my ESFP girls act no differently than my ESFP boys.
right,
Yet I know that they're being treated much differently
right,
at
right.
home. And no, girls don't do that. You don't get to play football. And just little things like that. Or I grew up playing with dolls, for instance. Let me just get that out
Hmm.
there. And my dad was like, no, you can't do that. It'll make you gay. Well, I am gay. So
Well, I mean,
and so
it
I'm like,
would,
sorry,
okay.
Barbie did it to me, Dad. Sorry.
Must
And
be
like
Barbie's
my
fault.
best friend, her name was Sheena. She was on the street, and I wanted to hang out with little girls. I'm more
Mhm.
related with them, more or less. And
That's interesting you say that, because all my life I've had more guy friends, and even
yeah,
still to this day, most of my close friends are male. So,
yeah,
or masculine type females, like
yeah.
powerful. It's very strange to me, but that's a
It shouldn't
consistency.
be though. I mean, I don't want to sound too like optimistic for the future, but it's just like imagine a world where everybody knows how to type each other. We have more of a system that's more accurate.
Hmm.
And you're like, well, you're going to go to ENTP school, you're going to go to INFJ school, and so our society, I think, would be a lot better because we understand each other better. And
Absolutely agree.
let me ask you this, and then
Yes.
we'll close unless you have anything else to talk about. Um, Once you learn at least basics about how each other types interact, and you lose the ability to hate. Do you
I
find that to be the
absolutely
case?
agree. Yes. For me, it comes easy to forgive people. I mean, just easily anyway, like naturally. But and I'd like to think that I don't get offended very often. But you almost start to see, I don't know, it like forms this compassion about people. Like you start to kind of put the puzzle pieces of who they are together, and you can't really be mad at them anymore. Well, like once you understand them, and you see the source of their behavior rather than just the surface level of their behavior. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it makes 100% sense to me. But, you know, I believe in accountability. I'm from, what is it, the Templar Quadra or whatever. Not Templar, I'm sorry, the Alpha Quadra or whatever. And I definitely believe in righteousness in a lot of different
mhm,
ways and right and wrong. Uh, but I've reached the point now where I don't judge people based on what they can't do.
mhm.
But if you
Right.
can do it and you should be doing it, I'll call you
Yeah,
out. Like
absolutely.
I have an ESFJ friend. I'm like, why aren't you involved in church community? What are you doing? You do no good, to society at home watching TV.
Mhm.
You should be out effie heroing everybody, and that's why people love you. They don't love you because you're by yourself. You're absolutely useless that way. You need to be,
Right.
helping people and doing stuff like that. And so, most definitely, when people call me out for maybe being illogical, for instance, I'm like, okay, fair enough. That's fair. I will try to look at it more objectively, and not use my what little emotions I have, but in my ways.
Exactly.
But uh, anything else?
I just want to make sure that all the if you if you have TE and SI in your ego, or if you can access TE and SI anywhere in your functions, and it's not a trickster or a demon function for you, um, do it.
Yeah,
Because I have TE trickster and SI demon, and I have the hardest time remembering any of the material that I read. So my best advice for especially TE child is read, soak this material up, and educate yourself so you can help other people learn the same material and take advantage of that TE child, and study, learn. Please read the
yeah,
original material. Don't limit your studying to what you see online or just videos. Like find the original text and actually like look at it and figure it out for yourself and ask questions. And you know, I'm so jealous that they have that ability.
yeah. I 100% agree. And TE Child is amazing at being able to accumulate information from books.
Yeah.
And both TE Childs have good memories. SI Nemesis is nothing to scoff at.
Hmm.
And like I mentioned, historian ESFPs, they exist. I've
Yeah.
known them.
Totally.
Relays, dates. Just like bam, 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 bam.
Well,
This is what
look at Vic. Look at
Yeah, look
Vic.
at Vic. Yeah, and
Yeah.
what's the difference between Vic and a Kardashian? Vic reads.
Right. There you go.
And
It's
so
fun.
there's, ENTP such as myself that's trying to improve themselves, looks at their emotional, inabilities and tries to improve them. And then there's the ENTPs that play video games all day in the basement,
Right.
never get better. And so if you're a gamer and the only ENTPs are the ones who just play video games all day long, yeah, they're
Hmm.
probably going to be assholes. you know
Yeah.
and but then there's ones who read, there's ones who interact with other people, who got over their SI inferior, who have lots of different friends and all over the community, realize they're not that smart, realize there's a lot more out there, and so yeah, with the stereotype, everybody has their abilities, everybody has their functions that make them amazing. uh, every type is irritating when immature, and
Yeah.
every type is amazing when mature.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
and
That's very important. The maturity and the growth level is absolutely important. Like
yeah,
that's another reason that debunks stereotypes for sure. The maturity level.
a lot of people ask me, why do I date older guys? They're more well-rounded, they're mature. So it's like,
I'll
yeah,
give you a
most people my
blanket.
age are kind of like still in that little framework of not really in their aspiration yet, or they have no idea how to use their shadow function even. And so it's just like, that's kind of how it is. And yeah, so when you're dealing with mature people, and you can kind of just like, oh wow, here you are, and you can see this, and you know this from a fact, everyone knows this, that when you're typing older people, they're above 60, they're harder to
Oh,
type.
it well, even younger than that, sometimes like in their 40s. I mean, because their ego, and I mean they're just all over the place. They're so well integrated and so well rounded. It's so hard to like pinpoint their ego because they've developed so well, and
Yeah,
they're it's hard to find like a critic function if they've developed their parent. Like it's just they're so well rounded. It's actually quite a beautiful thing.
yeah, especially if they're sensors too, because sensors, like
Yeah.
we mentioned, are more balanced people. They have access to affiliative, access to interest, access to pragmatism, access to systematic.
Hmm.
And so there, you get like a 70-year-old ISFJ, woman, granted you can kind of look at her and see how she has her hair and stuff like that, and you kind of like, well, but she could be very outgoing if she's really embraced that ENTP side of her mind. Okay, well, if there's anything else you want to talk about, I definitely want to have you back on. We'll talk about other subjects. Anybody wants to join these Facebook groups definitely are open. Just find them on Facebook. I will put them in the description below. Again, this is Abby. I'm Matt. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.